these teeth right out of there. You can see that.
All right, folks, California's first in the nation statewide task force of reparations voted to limit state compensation in the event it's a...
Oh, they want to mess with the feed. Okay. Wow.
To the descendants of free and enslaved black people in the United States in the 19th century. This decision rejects the proposal to include all black people who would receive reparations. Camila Moore, she is the California Reparations Task Force Chair. She joins us from Los Angeles to explain this decision. Camila, glad to have you here. First and foremost, there was a lot of people who talked on this issue. Dr. Greg Carr was one of the folks who participated in this hearing. How many folks did y'all count who actually testified in this matter on Tuesday?
11 people testified. So 6 of those 11 people were certified genealogists. 2 were Greg Carr and Jessica Ann Ayuar, and the other 3 were Marcus Champion, who's a grassroots organizer in California and worked on AB 3121 before it was enacted. Mike Davis, who's a former assembly member in the state of California and advocated for a lineage standard. And then lastly, Kevin Brown, who is an Evanston resident and spoke against a bit about what's going on with the reparations program in Evanston.
So the vote ended up being 5-4. So I mean, obviously that's a very close vote. What was the issue? Why was it so contentious?
Great question. So the community of eligibility discussion and debate has been kind of looming over the 9-member task force since we first started meeting as early as June of 2021. So we've been having a 10-month debate around eligibility. And the crux of the issue is, or was, should the eligibility standard be defined by a race-based standard? So as you said in your introduction, all Black Californians being eligible for compensation for reparations for the institution of slavery, or should it be based on a lineage standard where if you can trace your ancestry to what we decided on, an African-American descendant of a chattel enslaved person or the descendant of a free Black person living in the United States prior to the end of the 19th century, then you would be eligible. And so ultimately, 5 people on the task force voted for the lineage-based standard and 4 voted for a race-based standard.
So based upon that, if somebody Black came to the United States in 1899, they make the cut. If they came in 1900, they don't make the cut.
Potentially. We still have to work all those details out, but that's what it says.
So now here's the issue. How then how are you going to prove it? How will people be able to trace it? Because what we know is you don't necessarily have clearly defined records for people to be able to search their lineage. So how are you going to do it?
So that's a really great question. But first, before I answer that question, I think that oftentimes people don't ask the same question about how do you prove your Blackness, right? And how do you measure Blackness? How do you prove it? So what's to stop someone like a Rachel Dolezal or Mindy Kaling's brother, who's of Indian descent, who actually wrote a book about how he pretended to be Black to get into medical school? How do you determine who's Black, and why would we be comfortable with the state making those particular determinations? But to answer your question about lineage tracing, when you talk about international law and reparations under international law, one of those tenets is restitution. How do you make a person whole after the state has harmed you? And so the state has a responsibility. If they've broken part of your lineage or your history, they have the duty and the responsibility to repair that. So what does that look like practically? That could look like the state subpoenaing the Mormon Church for records, and assisting people for free for lineage tracing and things like that. So there's no burden or financial cost for anyone who may be eligible.
So let's actually deal with that. If that is the standard, I mean, so what is it? DNA? I mean, exactly what is it? So what then happens? Could you potentially have white folks saying, "I've got black lineage, I qualify"?
That potentially could happen, but I want people to be clear that that same scenario could be happening under a race-based standard, because race is a self-selecting category. Anyone can pick or select black or African American on the census record.
Man, this shit crazy.
And there's an example of that. For instance, Native Americans are going through this right now, where there's, as we know, not many Native Americans in this country, but in the 2020 census, they were overcounted because other people who are not really Native American,
they are lying
or checking Native American on the box.
Lying.
So
and
it's
lying.
a really complex issue.
That's because they don't want to tell you who the real indigenous people here on the planet are.
You got a variety of things going here. The state still has to decide if they're actually going to do this, and so you're laying out a standard here. But I do want to ask this. This is very interesting.
The same old trickery, y'all. Don't fall for this shit.
We're using slavery. California didn't become a state until 1850.
Peace, love, and life, family. Y'all want to follow the rest of this?
For very long,
look it up on YouTube.
Slavery ended. And so
I'm signing out. I had enough of this.
You realistically could have